BMW, or BMW as the Germans like to call it, has always been an aspirational brand. Petrolheads like you and me have longed to own one, but that hefty price tag has been a barrier. That's why in 2009, BMW launched the first Gen X1 as the entry point to their SUV lineup and made it significantly more accessible as compared to the rest of their offerings. But it came at the cost of features, power, and let's be honest, styling. But buyers embraced it, and the model turned out to be a global success. So, spurred on by the demand, BMW launched a second Gen X1 in 2015, which was based on the Mini Countryman, but it was a major step up in space, tech, and refinement. Now, with the third Gen X1, the value proposition is stronger than ever. So strong, in fact, that it makes more sense to opt for the X1 over its bigger sibling, the X3. And buyers across the globe are thinking the same thing, because between 2022 and 2024, BMW sold over 1.06 million units of the X1 globally. In fact, it was the highest selling BMW model in countries like the US and Belgium in 2024. So, in this video, we're asking the big question. Is the new X1 finally worthy of that BMW badge? Or is it just a Mini Countryman in disguise? For me, the X5 has always been the best BMW SUV in the portfolio. And the new X1 shares a lot of design cues with it, but shrunken down. Up front, you get the iconic wide kidney grilles that's upright and squared off. The headlamps are slimmer and sharper and feature the signature BMW LED TRLs. The front bumpers are sculpted and gives it a planted and confident look. Now the model we have here is the xDrive 20i with the M Sport package, meaning you get sportier bumpers, a larger 20-inch wheels and subtle M badging throughout. At the sides, the resemblance to the X5 continues, especially with the shoulder line that runs from the front of the car all the way to the rear. With the M Sport package, you also get body-colored side skirts. At the back, the design is clean but bold, much like the X5. Here you get C-shaped LED taillights that wrap around the body, a sculpted tailgate, and dual exhaust trims that's integrated into the body. Overall, it is compact, but it definitely doesn't look as entry-level as it did before. Yes, like we mentioned before, the X1 does share its underpinnings with the Mini Countryman. But here's the thing, BMW has tweaked enough, especially with the chassis, to make it distinctly their own. So why don't we go and test it out? So, how does it drive? Well, the key word here is refinement. See, it is a compact SUV, so it doesn't get a 3-liter turbocharged engine from the X5. What it does get is a 2-liter turbocharged engine that makes about 241 horsepower and around about 300 Nm of torque, which is more than sufficient for city driving and cruising on the highway. And the acceleration, it isn't that aggressive. It is linear and again, refined. Where the X1 really shines is in how planted it feels. You can just confidently chuck it around a corner and make sure that you're having a lot of fun. See, that xDrive all-wheel drive system adds a layer of sure-footedness to your drive. And the suspension does a really good job making you feel comfortable and soaking up the bumps when you're on patchy roads. You don't get the X3 levels of power or the X5 levels of comfort, but it does deliver the right amount of engagement. See, there is a distinct BMW-ness in the way it moves. It's composed, balanced, and again, refined. Alright, now that we are on the highway, I want to point out a couple of features that has really impressed me and show you how this car makes your everyday driving a whole lot more easier. The first is the assisted driving feature. What that does is, when activated, it sets the cruise control to the speed limit of the road that you're in and activates the lane keep assist, the adaptive cruise control, the distance control, and so on. So essentially, you just have to relax. Now, this is my go-to mode when I'm shuttling back to Abu Dhabi when I go back home in the evening. It just puts me in a very relaxed mode by the time I get home. And the second feature is the one I love the most, and that is the speed limiter feature. Meaning, you can set the speed to a limit, say for example 120, which is the speed limit of this road. So what that does is, no matter how hard you accelerate, it'll make sure that the car doesn't go beyond 120. So you know what that means, right? If you use it right, you can now bid goodbye to speed tickets. So in my opinion, it's not a rebadged Mini. It is a proper BMW. So that's one important box this car ticks. Now that we've seen how the X1 drives, let's talk about how it makes you feel behind the wheel. If you were to be spending upwards of 180,000 dirhams, the least you would expect is that the car pamper you. And from my experience, the X1 does that to a great extent. For starters, you get leather everywhere you touch. You get leather on the dashboard, get leather on the door pads, there's more leather on the armrests, the steering wheel, and of course the seats. Oh, and the driver's seat also massages you, which, needless to say, is a great feature to have when you're either stuck in traffic or when you're driving home after a long day of work. Speaking of the seats, you also have the option to extend the underthigh support, which makes long drives a whole lot more comfortable. Now comes the tech and features. You can access most of it through this curved display setup, which comprises of a 10.25-inch instrument cluster and a 10.7-inch infotainment system. Here you can find BMW following the minimalist trend and avoiding physical buttons, so you can only access temperature control from the infotainment system. In the infotainment system, you can also find features like the wireless Android Auto and settings to adjust your ambient lighting. Some features worth mentioning here are the park assist, where the car parks itself, the Harman Kardon speakers, which sound incredible, a full panoramic moonroof, and this rather uncommon setup of having a vertical wireless charger, which also has a clip to make sure that your phone stays in place. So overall, at the front, the X1 feels really good. In terms of practicality, we've already mentioned the wireless charger, but behind that you also get 2 cup holders and 2 USB Type-C chargers. Moving back, you can also find the floating center console, which houses the engine start-stop button, the gear knobs, the media controls, and behind that you have a small storage area under the armrest, but there's a lot more storage underneath the center console where you can store your handbag, your phone, and so on. Now let's move over to the rear. The story continues at the rear seats as well, because first things first, the rear seats are super comfortable to be in. Now, for a person who's just under 6 foot, with the driver's seat adjusted to my driving position, I have just enough leg room for my taste. In terms of headroom, there's ample amount of headroom thanks to these panoramic sunroofs. There are also reading lights up top, and to take that comfort factor up a notch, I also get a folding rear armrest. Now in terms of practicality, I get 2 AC vents, 2 USB-C charging ports, and storage underneath it for my phone. There's also storage on the door cubby and the armrests that can hold up to 500 ml of bottles rather comfortably. In terms of safety features, you also get ISOFIX anchors at the back seats as well. Now let's wrap things up and talk about the boot space. Now this is where the X1 excels over its rivals, because once you open the automatic boot lid, you can find up to 530 liters of luggage capacity, which is one of the largest in its category, beaten only by the Audi Q3. In short, it is pretty practical. Are you beginning to see a pattern here? It's now easy to see why the BMW X1 has been a strong pillar for the brand. Though it didn't manage to impress everyone, especially during its initial days, myself included, the newest model, in my opinion, finally feels like a well-rounded, premium and practical choice, especially for first-time luxury car buyers. Yes, it may not be the flashiest, but it just works, and that's what makes it so popular. So if you're after a premium SUV that feels every bit of BMW, then the X1 absolutely makes a strong point for itself. Now, if you feel like buying the X1 outright is not feasible for you at the moment, you can always opt to rent it from the self-drive app. Well, that's it for this video. Thank you for joining. This is Philip signing off.